War has never been absent from the Middle East, which has been one of the centers of humanity since ancient times. It has been watered with blood since the moment humankind set foot on it. Although the economic center of the world has shifted from these lands to other geographies over the centuries, the conflict and chaos that are taken for granted as the fate of the Middle East have never left the region. This week we will briefly explain how the USA settled in the region during the Gulf War, one of these chaos and conflicts in the 1990s. However, before starting this war, it is useful to take a look at the Iran-Iraq War, which has an organic connection in the war. Saddam Hussein, who took over Iraq in 1979, wanted an expansionist policy, and the biggest target of this policy was Iran. Relations between the two countries, which were strained due to border issues and the islands in the Persian Gulf, became even more tense after the Islamic Revolution in Iran. Saddam Hussein was concerned about Khomeini in Iran's provocation of the Shiite leadership in the majority establishment in Iraq and the production of poetry in the region. At the same time, Saddam was eager to annex the Arab regions in Iran, and in line with these concerns and goals, Iraq saw Iran's loss of power after the Islamic Revolution as an opportunity and launched an attack in September 1980. Iraq, which was superior in weapons, ammunition, and logistics organization, had no difficulty in getting what it wanted at the beginning of the battles. However, Iran upset the balance by fielding many more men than Iraq in ground combat, and by 1983, Iraq had lost almost all of its gains. After this, major clashes continued intermittently, completely locking down the general situation. There should have been a clear winner in the protracted war, but when things got messy, Iran shifted the war to the Persian Gulf in 1984. The shift of the war to the Persian Gulf made the countries of the world very uneasy. The war gradually turned from a regional showdown into a fight with global effects. The two countries that fiercely supported Iran in this chaotic environment were Hafez Assad's Syria and Muammar Gaddafi's Libya, who held the leadership of the Arab countries. Additionally, Jordan, Egypt, Kuwait, and Saudi Arabia openly supported Iraq. During this process, countries such as the United Arab Emirates, Bahrain, Qatar, and Oman also sided with Iraq. While Turkey preferred to keep its distance from both sides, European countries were sympathetic to Iran, even though they appeared neutral. The Soviet Union, on the other hand, was hesitant about supporting Iran. This showed that the Iraq-Iran war faced a problem for the first time over the control of Middle East oil. In the Iraq-Iran war, which lasted until 1988, the Iranians could not defeat Iraq, and a ceasefire was signed with the actual intervention of the USA against Iran. Neither Iraq nor Iran emerged victorious in this war, in which 1 million people lost their lives in 8 years. The only winner of the war was the USA, which stopped the threat from Iran and settled in the region. After this war, the Western world did not think that Iran could pose a threat. Saddam thought he was wasted in the war. The loss of prestige and economic crisis he experienced made him want to take action. Iraq also had problems with debts. Iraq, which borrowed nearly $80 billion for the war, received almost half of this money from Kuwait and Arabia. Saddam demanded that Kuwait give up $15 billion, claiming that this money was given as aid, not as a loan. Additionally, his claims about oil prices increased the tension. Saddam claimed that Kuwait had exceeded its oil extraction quota and that it was damaging Iraq by reducing prices. Showing its determination with these allegations and justifications, the Iraqi government entered Kuwait in August 1990, and the war began. However, this occupation was protested by many countries, especially the USA. These wars were events in which America took important steps in the process of becoming an effective player in the Middle East. In particular, the Gulf War was a critical turning point for America to demonstrate its military power in the region and to act in cooperation with its allies in the region. These wars emphasized America's strategic interest in energy resources in the region and affected the balance of power in the Middle East. Iraq already has 950,000 soldiers on standby from the previous war. In addition, there are 500,000 militia forces, making Saddam's army one of the largest in the world in terms of numbers. It also had between 500 and 700 aircraft, 5,000 tanks, 3,000 guns, and 160 helicopters. The Force Emirate, which was late to go on alert, was only able to mobilize around 20,000 soldiers. With the operation it launched in August, Iraq broke the rival resistance within 12 hours and captured the entire country in a short time. While the emir and the surviving Kuwaiti soldiers took refuge in Arabia, he declared the lands he captured on August 28th as the 19th province. This occupation was protested by many countries, especially the USA, and various attempts were made to reverse what Iraq had done. However, efforts to resolve this crisis without war did not yield results. The newly elected president of the USA, George Herbert Bush, wanted to do all the work in harmony with the country's Congress and move the work to the center of the United Nations, not the USA. For this reason, he announced that a multinational United Nations association should be established in Saudi Arabia against Iraq. As a result of these efforts, a coalition of 40 countries united against Iraq and 30 sent troops to the region. In total, more than 700,000 soldiers were among the forces gathered in Saudi Arabia, and 70% of this force consisted of the U.S. Army. The inventory of this coalition is superior to that of the Iraqi army, providing a great advantage for the United States and its allies. The collapse of the Soviet Union also caused the USA not to oppose its intervention. Under these conditions, the U.S.-led coalition started the Desert Storm operation on January 17, 1991, and established a great superiority over Iraq. Airstrikes weakened Iraq's defense systems, and then the ground operation began. American Marines and British armored forces came to the fore, and the Iraqi army surrendered without major resistance. The war ended when Iraq gave up within 100 hours and a ceasefire was declared. This war was an important turning point for the USA to assert its power and establish hegemony in the Middle East.